Good Friday morning, friends, and welcome to another episode of Finding God in the Dark. My name is Don,
And I'm Jonathan.
and this week we're only taking maybe we'll call it a downshift, and it's not really shifting gears, but we're downshifting a little, in that we're not going to try to bite off the entire season five of Chosen, but we're just going to do the first four episodes, so the first half of the season.
Yeah,
It is eight episodes, right?
it is 80
Okay.
episodes.
So we're doing the first half of the season. We're going to talk about today. Um, and then we'll probably do second half next week, and then we'll move on to some other stuff. But um, we were just discussing this prior to starting recording. Um, I'm finding that every time I put this show on and get into an episode, that somebody in my house starts cutting onions somewhere. Because
Yeah,
wow, it is powerful.
yeah.
Where do you want to start with these four episodes, John?
Well,
Because
well,
this was pretty intense. We're getting into Holy Week here, so
yes, that's part of the reason I thought it made sense for us to divide the season,
yeah.
because if you aren't aware as a watcher of ours, the Gospels, uh, I think two-thirds of Mark is this week. uh,
Hmm.
Talks about this week. I think the rest of the Gospels, a majority of each of the other Gospels, is spent on this last week. So
Yeah,
this is the primary text of the Gospels this
yeah.
week, and so I think it made sense in my head, at least, that we take time to go like, okay, what do we see here? Because there's a lot here. Um,
Yeah.
to me, I guess a good place to start is the first episode. Um, I thought it was interesting that, again, this is extra biblical stuff. This is stuff that they're probably drawing from some historical study. But I love the discussion of the Jewish and Roman leaders talking about, um, this is the major time for our revenues.
Right,
Like,
right.
and
Everybody
we
coming
don't,
to Jerusalem. Yeah.
yeah, we don't want to screw up our revenues.
Hmm.
And I, one of the things I think that you don't get in the Gospels, because that's not what they're focused on, is that the temple tax and the money changing and just the buying of animals for sacrifices had to be a major source of economic revenue.
Yeah.
And so the leadership of both the Jewish community and the Roman community would have been concerned about things that could screw up that economic um, underpinning of Jerusalem society.
Yeah, we don't want anybody derailing the gravy train, and that's exactly what Jesus comes in and does.
Yes.
Particularly in the court of the Gentiles, where he turns over the tables and
Yeah.
chases the money changers out.
Yeah.
Which was this the first episode? There was a really interesting exchange between some folks who had come from the Decapolis to buy
Yeah.
a goat,
Yes.
and
That was.
and
Yeah.
all the money, the exchange rates and what they
Great.
had to pay
Yeah.
for.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was fascinating. Now,
Yeah.
again, it's not it's not in the scriptures,
Yes.
but the concept is certainly in the scriptures.
Yeah.
And so just to see, again, we've said this a number of times, this series really brings in some extra biblical stuff to fill in the gaps, and does it in a way that never in any way, shape, or form disrespects the text,
Yes. Well,
which is fantastic.
and what I think is important is, and we'll talk about this throughout, because again, one of the best things about this series, I think, is that it takes seriously Jesus's and his community's Jewishness, and
Mhm.
doesn't make them a caricature of Judaism bad, Christianity good.
Right.
And I think that's essential for a lot of Christians, because I grew up in a community that kind of looked at Judaism that way. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of the bastard child. It's kind of the child that doesn't have the truth. And
Hmm.
I think what's important for a lot of Christians to recognize is Jesus doesn't disrupt the temple because he doesn't want people sacrificing there, or because he doesn't believe the temple's a good thing. He has no problem with the temple. He has no problem with the sacrifices. He has a problem with the reality that people are going through the motions and not actually living the Jewish faith out. And
Right.
he has a problem with the fact that he thinks people are being ripped off and abused by the system.
Yeah, I mean, the word that, okay, so I'm not as much anymore, but maybe 10 years ago, I was very much a Disney guy.
Yeah,
And, one of the things that has kind of pushed my family away from going to Disney is how much they have monetized everything. And
yes,
that's really what's happening here, right? The whole sacrificial order has become monetized.
yeah,
Like, how can we make more money on this?
yes,
And ouch.
yeah,
I mean, in a lot of ways, it's a commentary on our own churches, even today,
hmm,
right?
yeah, absolutely,
We worry about money,
yeah.
and we're not the scriptures, the gospel. They don't teach us to worry about money. It's put your trust, put your faith in God, put your faith in Jesus Christ. The money will at some point take care of itself.
And so I loved the fact that the people that were critical and kind of downplayed the importance of the temple were never the disciples and never Jesus. And I love that choice
Right.
because too often Christians act like um, Christianity was about this idea of the temple isn't important, doesn't have value, isn't what real worship was, and that's not anywhere in the Gospels. That's
Right.
nowhere in the New Testament.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important for Christians to recognize that the people that make a joke about it being theater or it not being important or being a waste of time in the show were always met by the disciples or Jesus going, "You've got this wrong. You're missing the point. You're missing the value." And I think it's really important for Christians to hear that.
I I've probably told this anecdote before.
Yeah,
My first year in seminary, my New Testament theology professor,
yeah,
um, and I wish I could remember his name, but he that was one of the key statements of that class was you cannot be a faithful Christian without a level of respect for your mother faith, which is Judaism.
yeah,
Um, it, this was Jesus' faith. It wasn't just,
yeah,
it's not like, oh, well, we have it right and the Jews have it wrong.
yeah.
That's not that's not scriptural, friends. That's, go back and read it again.
Yeah, and what was something that jumped out at you about the season that we watched so far?
Oh my. It was interesting that I guess and we're in the first episode again.
Yeah,
My take on it, maybe it's from seeing it in several places, including Jesus Christ Superstar, was that the confrontation between Jesus and the Pharisees about, tell these people to be quiet. It
mhm,
took place it took place away from the city.
yeah,
The people were at the city, and I'm not even sure well, they say it in this that they hadn't seen Jesus yet.
yeah,
And it was like they see you riding on this donkey and they're going to make the connection and
yeah,
it's going to be even worse for you
yeah,
where I'm used to seeing it differently where the Pharisees are kind of on the walls or at the gate and confronting him. Here they're confronting him out away from the city before he's even encountered the people yet
yeah,
you know so again, they're taking a little creative license. Well, somebody's taking a little creative license. I don't know if the other interpretation is right or this one is
yeah,
right
sure,
on that case, right? um but they've done that with so many of these things.
yeah.
The whole when he turns over the tables, when he chases the money changers out, he creates well, we're told he creates a whip out of cords. He didn't do that here. He just found a whip or had a whip.
Yeah.
um and that always
But
brings me
you
back to,
actually, in the first episode, you see him making it.
okay,
The very end, you see him
I must have
what
wasn't
appears to
watching
be
right now.
making a whip. Yeah,
Okay.
but because the text says he made a whip,
Yeah.
and most people in their heads imagine like him doing it there, but it makes more sense that
that he
he
was
kind of had
doing.
this
There was a
plan.
plan, and that's one of the things I think is really striking here. In the first four seasons,
Yeah,
Jesus is very even tempered,
yeah,
very, calm, cool, and collected. Even when things happen, there's no,
yeah,
he just kind of goes away and processes his
yeah,
his stress or whatever.
yeah.
Here, this is a different Jesus.
Yes,
I mean, it's the same actor and it's the same
yeah,
character, obviously,
yeah,
but there are moments when he is angry, righteous
yeah,
indignation.
yeah,
I've said this before to people, when I first started in the church in youth ministry was in the 90s, and the kids were wearing a lot of these. You remember that rubber band bracelet that said
yeah,
WWJD? What would
yeah,
Jesus do?
yeah.
Well, I tell people nowadays, if you want to play that game, what would Jesus do? Making a whip and chasing people out of the buildings is not out of the question. Just I'm not advocating it,
Yeah.
but it's not out of the
Well,
question.
again, most people who study and try to understand the Gospels in a historical context usually frame the idea that this is probably what got Jesus killed, like this action,
Right.
because
And it seems to be going that way with the Pharisees and the scribes and such.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because again, he becomes in the Gospels, it's kind of in the middle of the week, and you have build up. But I know a lot of historians that are trying to look at the Gospels from a historical lens say most likely uh, this he probably did this and got arrested and got like this was the impetus because again
Right.
he's disrupting an economic necessity. He's causing chaos, and you can't just kind of let someone get away with that because then you have things fall apart. Or when you are oppressing a group of people, you can't just let somebody get away with going out of their way to uh, flaunt and try to disrupt what you want to do.
Yeah. And
Authority
again,
authority doesn't work that way.
well, and again, he's disrupting, he's derailing the gravy train.
Yeah.
He's
And and I don't know, one of the things I've really since Judas showed up, but especially this season so far, one thing I've really liked about this is they humanized Judas. They
Mhm.
humanize, like in the second episode, it almost ends with him saying, what have you done?" Like he's saying that to Jesus, and it's kind of like, what have you done?" And it's Jesus whipping and what's called the temple disruptance, or
Mhm.
the temple sometimes destruction is, but it's this idea of disrupting the situation.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I find the fact that they want to take care with Judas and kind of go like, he's frustrated because he thinks Jesus is going to bring all the Jewish people together and so they can overthrow the Romans. And he's looking at Jesus through this lens that was very much a part of how people thought the Messiah was going to function. And he wants Jesus to succeed. He desperately believes that Jesus can succeed, and yet he won't trust where Jesus is going because he's
Yeah.
he's convinced. Well, he's got to do this, this, and this for it to work, and so I need to make sure he does this, this, and this. And at one point, Peter says, "You have so much of your ideas. You can't just have faith in what he's doing." And I think I
Right.
don't know. To me, I don't know how you feel, but I love how they dealt with Judas without making him this evil villain. The-
Well, I think there's something to be said for several storylines like
yeah,
that. Okay. Judas Thomas as
yeah,
well. In that they have done a really, really good job of long-term storytelling,
yes,
right? They had the end in mind
yeah,
as they were going along and filling in the blanks, right?
yeah,
Why we're going to find out that Thomas, who all we knew about Thomas prior to this series is he's the doubter.
yeah,
Well, now we're getting, okay, this probably isn't exactly why, but
yeah,
now they're filling in the blanks. Why is he a doubter?
yeah,
Because his fiance was killed by a Roman soldier, and Jesus didn't resurrect her, but he sees him resurrect Lazarus,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And so that's I think that's something that it really struck me. Again, they're starting, it's been going on with Judas as well, right?
Yeah.
That they've really humanized Judas and taken away him being this sort of iconic cardboard cutout betrayer,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah.
Same with Thomas, same with Peter.
Yeah.
Peter was the rambunctious rush ahead, and they've really filled in the blanks as to why, in a way that's, again, does not disrespect the source material.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing that struck me, and I think it's the episode 4. It's towards the end of episode 4 when Jesus wants to be by himself,
Mhm.
and he has this vision that seems to confuse him,
Yeah.
right? Of I'm assuming it's supposed to be David, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
It's David
Yeah.
singing a psalm.
Yeah. It's the
Um,
end of episode 3. Yeah.
oh, is it 3?
Yeah.
Okay. And I saw, I was like, wow.
Yeah. Well, yeah, again, I will actually have to say, I really enjoy also how they allow what, if we are going to truly affirm what we claim in like the Nicene Creed, that Jesus is fully human and fully divine,
Hmm.
then we have to recognize that having some kind of sense that you were going to die would not be easy for you, because
Yeah.
it's not. I've never met any human being where death is easy. I've seen different layers of people accepting it or working through it, but nobody deals with their death easily. You
Right.
know, especially a death that's violent or a death that kind of comes out of nowhere. And so I like the fact that they have him struggle. That I like the fact that
Yeah.
that like he sees blood coming down the wall, and like like
Yeah, that was another
and
vision, right? Yeah.
again, another powerful thing that they do, I think, pretty well is that in the text you get a double sense. This is to me, it's throughout the Bible. You can say how you feel. It's not just about Jesus, it's about everything in the Bible. You get a sense in the Bible that God is in control and that God is kind of leading us through this story. At the same time, you get this deep sense that human beings are really choosing, and things could work out differently if human beings chose to do things differently.
Yeah.
You get a sense of both of those things, and you get a sense of both of those things in the gospel story. And so it just makes sense that you get these moments where like Jesus is kind of talking to Judas and going like, "I'll pray for you. Like, I hope you don't betray me. I'm really pulling for you, guy." Like, and you realize that
Like
there's
he
that
knows it's
tension.
going to happen, and yet
Yeah,
he hopes that it doesn't. Yeah.
yeah. And so you have this tension. You have this tension. And the easiest way to see it in the text is when Jesus is praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, right? And he says, "Lord, if there's a
Yeah.
way out of this, if there's a way that this doesn't have to happen the way I feel like it's going to happen, if this cup can pass, please let it pass." And
Yeah.
so you get this sense I feel like they do a good job in the series about this idea of God is in control, and God is leading, or at least the ball's rolling down the hill, but we still, as human beings, are shaping it, even if there's also a divine element to all of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that's probably exactly what's kind of going on in these visions, right? The blood on the wall,
Yeah.
seeing David. It's, you're again, the writers, the producers are kind of leaning into Jesus' human side, in that space.
Well, again, it's this, you talked about, I think you mentioned it to me, I think you mentioned it in other videos, that Christians have always had different atonement theories.
Right.
Why did Jesus's life, death, and resurrection happen the way it did? And they could have, as writers and shapers of this series, they could have just picked one of those atonement theories and run with it and
Hmm.
said, and clearly kind of put the stake down. And what's nice is they've thrown in different elements of different atonement theories, and they
Right.
haven't given us this is the only one. And what I like about that is there's deep truth in that. There are none of the atonement theories don't have problems. None of the atonement theories don't
Yeah.
leave answers open.
Well,
They just
they're like I think the atonement theories in a lot of ways are very much like metaphors, right? No metaphor completely encapsulates an idea.
yeah,
At some point, they all break down.
yeah,
And so yeah, I think that the producers, the writers, director
yeah,
have done a good job of bringing in different ideas and saying, hey, we don't know exactly what it was.
yeah,
So, could be this, could be that, could be, something that we haven't discussed even yet,
yeah.
you know?
And um, so we'll go to the episode that I don't know, I can't speak to you, but the episode, my favorite episode, and the episode that made me cry the most. I don't think I've cried this much
Go
in
on.
anything for a long time watching it.
Hmm.
Like you, people could, if I like stepped out right after, people would have thought, did someone die recently? Or like, I was just like, oh my God. But
Uh-huh.
they choose this element of the Passover that, to be honest, I have heard before, but never really set with. And they start the episode
Um,
and they end the episode
yeah, I know where you're going now.
with
Okay.
this element. It's transliterated Dayyenu. I'm guessing that's transliteration from the Hebrew to that to
Hmm.
English. Do you have any idea how you pronounce it? Okay.
Not a clue. No.
So anyway, it's
Should
a
I try and
tradition.
look it up? Did you try to look it up?
I looked up how to spell it, but I
Okay.
don't know how to pronounce it. But anyway, in the Passover liturgy as it's been passed down, there's a portion of it where people go kind of people say it throughout, like not one person says it, but different people join in. But basically, they say, "Had you just done this for us? Had you just freed us from slavery?" And then
Okay,
the response,
the transliteration
yeah,
pronunciation is Dayenu.
Daniel, okay,
Dayenu.
Daniel. Okay, so it's basically, had you only uh, freed us from slavery, and then the response from everybody else is, it
That
would have
would
been
have been
enough.
enough.
And
Yeah,
then you go through all the miracles of Exodus, and then the response is it would have been enough. And
would have
then
been
they go
enough.
to another miracle or another thing that God did for them, and it would have been enough. And it's like, you took us through the desert, and that would have been enough. You fed us in the desert, and that would have been enough.
Hmm.
And the episode starts that way with the guys
At,
doing
at
that
the
at the
the Last
Passover.
Supper. Yeah.
And that's one of the elements that we didn't mention throughout this this series. I'm guessing all the way through, they kind of bring you through the you they show you scenes of the Last Supper and then take you back to kind of earlier
Right.
times. They go
It's
about
like Last Supper flashback
yeah.
is kind of the structure of each episode. Yeah.
And one of the elements that is in the Gospels that I've always not made sense to me, and I liked how they did it. They kind of say, well, Jesus you almost get the sense that Jesus wants to protect the women, or that Jesus is
Hmm.
worried it will be too hard with the women there for
Hmm.
him, especially his mom. So he asks the women to not kind of peel back till the end
Keep
of
their distance. I think is
keep
what he
their
said.
distance.
Keep your
Yeah,
distance, right?
yeah. And they end this episode with him basically doing a supper with just the ladies. And the women say, "Okay, they were gonna do what you asked. We're gonna kind of,
Let's not, hey, no,
yeah,
let's not get too deeply into this,
yeah,
okay? Or
yeah,
somebody's going to start cutting onions in my office, right?
yeah. Okay, I won't."
I'm
But
sorry, guy.
but
Guy.
they do a version of the Danu
Dianu.
Dan
Dianu.
Dan Dayano.
It's
They
Die,
Dan
A, New.
okay, Dai Anu.
Dianu.
They do a version of the Dai Anu where they take stories and things that Jesus did for them, and
Their own stories, yeah.
so they were like, "Had you just healed me, that would have been enough. Had you just I think Mary starts it off with, "Had you just uh, came to proclaim the good news, that would have,
Would have
and
been
not
enough.
and not called me, that would have been enough." And they each do this, including his mom, and including, and she goes, I guess she actually starts it. She goes, "Had I just been able to hold you, and you not, come to do anything else for God, it would have been enough."
Yeah.
And they go through all of these things, and oh my God, it's just like, I'm just like, okay, okay, can I get some more Kleenex? Uh,
And again, and I want to echo something I just said a few minutes ago. This is great long-term storytelling,
yes.
right? Because they're calling back to, the first season even.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Go
And
ahead.
I just, that idea of setting with Jesus and just going, some of the stuff you did for me would have been enough, but you did more. And
Yeah.
just being able to imagine being able to do that with Jesus, I think that's what's so heartbreaking. Is you're just like, man, I would like to do that. I hope to get my chance someday. Like, that to me,
Yeah.
that was a beautiful way to capstone this episode, and it was just like, oh my God.
I wonder, and this really just came to me. I wonder if there's a way to do that as a devotional type of thing with our own churches, maybe during Lent
Yeah,
or something,
that's an excellent. I have always thought that maybe like in, you know, there's always some weirdness when you do a Passover meal with Christians when you're not,
Yeah, yeah.
but that would be a really interesting element to add to the, like, to a point where you go like, what would you want to say to Jesus, or what, and then
Right.
everybody responds to when someone's done saying it, you could just have them respond with, and that would have been enough.
Would have been enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like that could be a really powerful
Yes.
kind of worship experience.
Yeah, and
Um
I thought, I one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, that we have a little more time left, so we have time to do it.
mhm,
Um, if people don't know, the Christian tradition has often referred to Mary Magdalene as the apostle to the apostles, with the idea that she was the first evangelist, she was the first person to kind of share the news of the resurrection with anybody
mhm,
else.
mhm,
I think it's interesting. I kind of feel like they're helping to try to explain that, because in this series, especially these last four episodes, they have really kind of highlighted Mary Magdalene as someone who understood and other
yeah.
people didn't. And in fact, a couple of times Jesus even says, you're sad because you
You're
are paying
listening.
attention,
You're listening. Yeah.
you're listening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you think about their choice to say, like, we need to highlight the fact that she was the first person to proclaim the good news. She was the first apostle. She was the first, she was the first person to evangelize. And we need to kind of explain why she got that gift and why she got that call.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not inclined to think that there's anything particularly. I mean, history tells us that she was.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I guess in my mind, I'm thinking that the writers are probably just trying to stick to as close to history as they can.
yeah.
Um, I think I think it's probably going to upset some people. It doesn't bother me because look, we're in a denomination that
Yeah,
you know that honors women and
yeah,
ordains women, and our own district superintendents, our own direct supervisors, and our bishop are women,
yeah.
and I don't have a problem with that. So
No, you're right. There are people that are probably pulling their hair out, because, how dare you highlight a woman? And it's like, well, but the reality is the scriptures do.
And look, I have had this discussion, and I'm not gonna put it in a context because I think it would reveal a little too much about the situation. But I've had this issue in the past with another church in the community where I was serving,
Sure.
and my sense of it is, well, if that's the way you feel, you do what you have to do.
Yeah,
You know, if that's how you function, then you go ahead and do that. You're welcome to be involved in because it was an ecumenical event, right? Well, you're
yeah,
welcome to be involved or not if that's how you feel, you know. Um, I'm not going to lay that burden on the person that was asked to preach or teach
yeah.
because they don't need it.
No,
There, as far as I'm concerned, I was chair of the local ministerium. As far as I'm concerned, they're going to preach,
yeah,
and if you don't like it,
yeah,
that's on you.
yeah,
Um, it's, I mean, I get it. Some people just, well, this is what it says. No, I want you to look at that passage, and then I want you to go get yourself a good Bible background commentary. I recommend Craig Keener's. um, and look up what Paul was saying
yeah.
when you read that passage, okay?
Well, and
Find out who
yeah.
the people he was writing it to were, what he was saying,
Yeah.
and then apply it
Well, and
because
then yeah,
you
and
don't
then
understand it otherwise.
to me, what I like to do is go like, okay, I'll let you say First Timothy if it really means a lot to you. Now explain to me why um, Paul's magnum opus, the letter to the Romans,
Hmm.
he hands to Phoebe, calls her a deacon of a church, and then gives her the letter to take to them, which meant in the ancient world that meant she would read it to them and explain it to them.
Right,
So she literally is doing what we call preaching.
right.
So explain to me how now,
She's an itinerant
2,000
preacher.
years later, she can't preach. Like, how does that work?
I you're getting no argument from me on that one, John. Not at all.
Yeah, yeah, we're preaching to the crowd and the choir. So
Well, look, I am just of a mind that God's grace is available to anyone who will ask, and far be it from me to deny that grace to someone simply because their plumbing's different than mine.
yes,
It doesn't it doesn't wash. And
yeah.
look, I come at it from a very practical perspective. Uh, let me judge on what you say, not what you are,
Well,
you know.
I think what's interesting, I haven't gone down too far down the rabbit hole of critiques of this series. I've seen some stuff, but I just
Mhm.
didn't want to go down that rabbit hole. But I think a lot of the critique basically boils down to why didn't they choose to interpret this exactly like I interpret it? Instead of recognizing, guys, the Bible can be interpreted different ways. And sometimes there's value in listening to other people's interpretations.
Okay, here's what I want to recommend. If that's how you feel, if you're watching and
Yeah,
that's how you feel, go out and purchase for yourself. There's a software program called Logos, however you want to pronounce it, Logos.
yeah,
It is a Bible study platform. It contains commentaries and books, literally hundreds of commentaries and books. It's going to cost you 12 to $1,500. I have it. um, and do a little research because you're you're coming at it from the wrong direction. You're ending up in the wrong place.
yeah.
Is really what it is. And you know, and look, friends, that's coming from a conservative.
Yeah, yeah. The progressive on the show is not saying that. He's nodding heavily, but he's not saying it.
I'm just saying. That's all. All right, friends, we're coming down to only a couple of minutes left. So we're going to wrap this up. I'm invested. I haven't gone into episode 5 yet, but whew, man, it's got like any
Bring
good
these with you.
series. Yeah, right. Bring your tissues. It's got its hooks in me, man. So I'm invested to see where we go for the next episodes of this season. I've had some people from church who've told me how much they enjoyed it. They've already seen the whole season, so.
Right.
Um, but that's where we'll be next week. We're going to finish this season, episodes 5 through 8 of season 5 of The Chosen, and hopefully we won't need as many. We're going to need more tissues.
I was gonna say, are you kidding me?
We're going to need more tissues.
He hasn't gotten arrested yet. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's gonna be rough. All right, friends. Until next week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all again next Friday. Keep on finding God in the dark. Take care and God bless. Bye. Friends, thank you again for watching the Finding God in the Dark podcast. If you're finding these discussions helpful or meaningful in your Christian walk, then we'd invite you to go ahead and subscribe down below. Get more of this content. We publish every Friday morning at 10 a.m. And we're so glad that you can be with us and enjoy these discussions as well. Take care and God bless. Bye now.